So a bag of clay is about 22 pounds. A box of clay is 44 pounds. And you'll probably go through a whole box of clay while you're in class this semester. So here we have some plastic clay. So to make your stamps, and Sarah Pike showed you how to do this a little bit. You take off a little bit of clay. Any clay that you're not using, like this, that you don't want it to dry out. These are sitting out because I do want them to dry out. I want them to get harder. I don't want that to get harder, so my microfiber cloth is wet. I'll just throw that on top of it and let that sit. So I'm going to make a little ball that's nice and plastic. And because I haven't handled it too much, it doesn't have any cracks in it yet. And then I'm going to start by making the handle. Remember, we want to keep the clay pinky finger thickness everywhere. Okay, so I'm going to make a little pinched handle, and then the only time you ever put clay on the table is for this assignment. The rest of the time you're going to keep it on your clay mat. I don't want you to do this on your mat because it's going to pick up the texture. So I want it to be flat. So I'm going to tap it on the table until I get a nice flat surface. Okay, so there, and then I can change the shape of this. Let's say I would like this to be square. I can square this up and make a square stamp instead of a round stamp just by manipulating these. Keep tapping it so you keep that nice super flat edge there. And then I'll set that aside and let it dry. So this guy was set aside. I'll do this one. I didn't. Let me see. Okay, I will do this guy. All right, so let's say we set this aside and let it dry, and Sarah Pike showed you how to get your edges nice and clean. So I'm going to take a knife. So there's extra tools that are not in your toolkit, like carving tools and specialty tools that you only need once in a while on the back table there. Can you just point to them there so we can see? Right there. You see them? Vanna White. There they are. And then if you borrow, like this is called a fettling knife, and for this is a great tool for getting those nice, clean, sharp edges to your stamp. And then these little bits. So now I have nice, clean edges to my stamp. Okay, good, good. You with me? Okay, so now I've made some blanks. This one I want to show you because I did it badly on purpose. See how thin that is right there? That is not pinky finger thickness. So when I go to stamp this, probably it's going to curl up like this, and if it gets a little bit harder, it'll break when I'm stamping it. So you want your edges of your stamp to be like pinky finger thickness. So there's the bottom of my stamp, there's the thickness of it, and this is just the handle. Good, good. Okay, so now let's get a design on this. So this is leather hard. I want to get a design onto my stamp. So I'm going to try, maybe on this one, I'll make this round again. I'm going to do my signature. So I'm going to do my signature. These are just water-based pens. They're just pens that have water-based ink in them. If I go over top of that a few times with this water-based ink, you guys see that there? And then get my clay just a little bit damp. I can usually, which one did I do? This one. Yeah, I'll do this. I can usually pick that ink up and put it right onto the clay. Works best on wet clay. Where's the one I just made? This guy. Let's try that again. Works really, really good on wet clay. It doesn't work super, super good on leather hard clay. So there's my wet clay. There we go. So now my CW is transferred onto the clay, ready to carve, but it's backwards. right? And that's a good thing because then when we stamp it into the clay, it'll go forwards. You with me? So we want things to be backwards on our stamp. So I've got a little bee here, so I could also draw out the little bee, and I could transfer that onto my stamp for my repeater textures. I could also print stuff out. So I printed this off the internet. And if I want to, I can just trace this with this water-based pen and then put my stamp on top of that and pick that up. So you don't actually have to draw anything to do that. Okay? You with me? Okay, so we're going to borrow these pens from me. It has to be water-based ink. So, look up here. Is that backwards? No, it isn't. So I use this. I'm going to put it in the used container, and then I will spray these with disinfectant and put them in the clean. Okay, it's just so, because those are shared supplies that we're going to use. Okay, so there's my stamps. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about carving. This one I did this morning. It's leather hard. I made it this morning, I carved it this morning, and now I'm going to see how it actually worked. So once you've got a few stamps, you can use your rolling pin, your fancy rolling pin that I made you from a PVC pipe. I saved this PVC pipe from carrying poop from a toilet, and now it's becoming a ceramic tool. Okay, so now we have a little slab of clay. This I made this morning, but I can already use it because it's leather hard to impress into the clay and see what kind of a texture it makes, right? And then I can see sort of how this is going to look when I use it as a repeater. I can see what it looks like right away. So some of the other ones that I have here. So I took that course from Sarah Pike. This is one of her mugs. I bought this from her. So that artist that we watched yesterday with the sub, this is one of her mugs. And she did this texture with a roller. Okay, so the roller she would have rolled there. And you can make a roller too if you'd like. This is one of my favorite rollers. So if I roll this into the clay, like that, look at that texture. Funky, hey? Okay, so this is a stamp that I made while I did her course. So I made the stamp the shape of the feather, and I carved the edges of the stamp because I didn't want to see the edges of the stamp. So when I press this into the clay, that's the impression it makes. You guys see that? Right? Whereas this stamp, I made this stamp, it's just flat. All I did was made these nice sharp edges as a honeycomb because I love honeybees, and I can use this to make a honeycomb texture by repeating it. Super, super simple, right? Repeating it over and over again. This one here is a diamond, right? You get the idea? It's not rocket science. So there's my chicken foot so that I can do chicken feet. But you see that the chicken foot there, you can see the edges of the stamp there. And I did that on purpose. I wanted to see the edges. If you don't want to see the edges, then you do something like that. Okay, so you can make rollers and you can make stamps. So what I want you to do today, because we don't have a ton of time today, and we want to wait for the clay to be leather hard, is I want you to make your clay stamps and, try to keep it thickness of pinky, nice flat bottom, and cut your edges so that they're nice and clean and neat, and really think about your shapes. So you can make them squares, triangles, rectangles, any shape that you want. Okay, make your blanks today. So then these pieces, if I want, this one I'm done carving, so I'll put that in the kiln room. But these ones I still want to do some carving on tomorrow. So class is over, but I don't want these to get hard. So I'm going to put them in my humidor, face down, and put the lid on at the end of class. Anything you put in your humidor will stay as wet as when you put it in forever, ever and ever. Anything you leave out on the table is slowly going to get drier and drier and drier as you go. This one's done, so I'm gonna let it dry. Okay. So rule of thumb, rule of pinky, yeah. So at the end of class, this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm finally going to stop talking. I'll put all my stamps into my humidor. This clay is still soft, it's still usable, so I'm going to fold it in such a way that I don't trap any air bubbles in it. Put it back in the bag. This clay is too hard to work with, so I'm going to toss that in the garbage. Try to keep the clay from becoming garbage if you can help it. Okay, so this clay, if you have a little bit of hard clay left over, this is what I want you to do, okay? This is how you keep the clay from becoming dust and from damaging our lungs. You ready? Okay, so there's little bits of clay here. You're going to take a little bit of hard clay or soft clay, sorry, and you're going to pick up all the little bits of clay that you find that are on your clay mat, okay? And if you want, if you're super careful, you can, instead of doing that, you can take your whole mat to the garbage and shake it out in the garbage, okay? Usually they're fine and ready to roll up after that. If you have a lot of wet clay, look up here and listen. You guys, I know this is a lot of talking, but this part is the really important to listen to part, okay? You with me? Okay, so this part, if you have a lot of wet clay, sometimes it's good to wipe with your microfiber cloth. You wipe to the middle and you kind of pick it up with your microfiber cloth, and then you'll put your rolling pin, hopefully it's still clean, and you'll roll that up and you'll put that away, okay? If you have any clay tools that need to be cleaned, you'll clean those and you'll put those away. If you have any wet clay like this that is too hard, too dry to do anything with, that will go in the garbage. Okay. Then, last but not least, look up here and listen. You're going to take your wet microfiber cloth. It has to be wet. You wet it at the beginning of class. And you're going to push, lifting your cloth, you're going to push and pull all the little clay bits and particles to the middle of the table. So I'm only doing this spot because that's all you can see, but you would do your whole quarter of your table. Or if you want to, you do the wiping for you and the other person that sits with you, and the other person does the drying. So there's a few little bits there in the middle. I'm wiping to the middle because I don't want to wipe off the table. You with me? If we wipe off the table, we end up with clay on the floor. And I really feel it these days. I'm getting really old, you guys. It's starting to affect me more and more. So you pick up those clay bits and then wash your microfiber cloth before you put it away. Wet clay doesn't hurt anybody. Dry clay does. So this part, so I wiped it. Now all of those clay particles are wet, but they're still on the table. Gentlemen, take your paper towel and wipe to the middle. This part is the most important part. The paper towel is the most important part. Even if you don't have time, like if you're like working to the end of class, you don't have time to do this part, spray the table with the sanitizer and wipe it, because the particles of clay are going to go here. They're not really going to stick to this. This will make them wet, stick to the table. This is what picks them up. So you wipe and then you throw that in the garbage. Okay? And then the last thing you'll do is, once everything's put away on your shelf, grab some sanitizer and you sanitize your spot and the back of your chair, and you're good to go. Okay? Anything that you use, any clay tools that you use from back there will go in here. I will sanitize them for you and put them away. Okay? Sound good? Okay, so let me just show you